she was invisible. To her ex-husband, Elena Hayes was just a ghost in a beige cardigan, a relic of a life he'd upgraded from. He stood in the sterile luxury of the private airport lounge, laughing at her. He mocked her failure, her quiet existence. He had the new wife, the new company, the new life. Elena had a cup of complimentary coffee. But in 10 minutes, the whine of a $70 million engine would change everything. The laughter would die in his throat, and he would finally learn who she really was. The lounge at the Teterboro Executive FBO hummed with a quiet, expensive energy. It was a sound Elena Hayes had never gotten used to, the sound of lives lived at a different altitude. The scent of dark roast coffee and polished mahogany hung in the air, a stark contrast to the small, one-bedroom apartment she'd called home for the past 18 months. She sat in a plush leather armchair, her back rigid, tracing the rim of a porcelain cup with a nervous finger. Her oatmeal-coloured cardigan felt like a burlap sack in a room draped in cashmere and bespoke suits. Today was the day, the culmination of 674 days of relentless, silent, soul-crushing work. The day her new life either began or shattered completely. She was nervous, so nervous that the complimentary biscotti on her saucer remained untouched. Her stomach was a knot of anxiety, and a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Hope. She was waiting for a flight. Not a commercial one, not even a first-class seat. She was waiting for a GX, or so the email had said. The very idea was so absurd that she kept checking the printed confirmation in her simple tote bag, half expecting a security guard to tap her on the shoulder and point her toward the main terminal, where she belonged. Her divorce from Richard Davenport had been a masterclass in public humiliation. He hadn't just left her, he had systematically erased her. They had been college sweethearts, the classic pairing. He, the charismatic business major, and she, the brilliant, introverted computer scientist. Together, they founded Helios AI, a company built entirely on the back of her revolutionary machine learning algorithm. Elena had been the architect, the engineer, the very soul of the company. Richard had been the face. He charmed investors, gave TED Talks on her work, and graced the covers of business magazines. Then came Chloe. Chloe was a decade younger, a social media influencer whose entire contribution to society seemed to be posting pictures of expensive things. Richard, in the throes of a spectacular midlife crisis, decided Chloe was the upgrade he deserved. The divorce was brutal. Richard's legal team, funded by the company she had built, painted her as a bitter, unsupportive, and replaceable cog in the machine. They argued that her algorithm, while clever, was just a piece of the puzzle. The real value, they claimed, was in Richard's vision and brand building. In the end, he kept the company, the house in the Hamptons, the art collection, and the network. Elena was left with a modest cash settlement and a single obscure patent she had filed under her own name years before, an experimental offshoot of her main algorithm that Richard's lawyers had deemed academically interesting but commercially worthless. They had let her keep it out of pity, a scrap from the table. She'd spent the last of her settlement money just to survive and pour the rest into a rented server and endless nights of coding. That worthless patent, it turned out, was not worthless at all. It was the key. While Richard was busy running Helios AI into the ground with flashy, unfocused projects, Eleanor had been in her tiny apartment, nurturing that single patent into something revolutionary. She'd built a new company from the ashes, Phoenix Systems, a name she'd chosen on a night fueled by desperation and black coffee. For 6 months, she had been in top-secret negotiations with Astra Dynamics, a global technology conglomerate run by the elusive and legendary Julian Thorne. They hadn't just been interested, they had been stunned. Her new platform could solve a problem in global logistics that had baffled the industry for a decade. The deal was staggering, a life-altering acquisition that would make her one of the most influential figures in tech. Today, Astra Dynamics was flying her to their headquarters in Geneva to sign the final papers. The jitters in her stomach were real. This was it. She checked her simple Timex watch, a practical gift from her late father, and took a small sip of lukewarm water. She just had to wait. She just had to get on that plane. She closed her eyes for a brief second, trying to center herself, trying to silence the ghosts of Richard's voice in her head. The voice that still whispered she was nothing without him. And that, naturally, was when she heard his. Well, 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 look what the cat dragged in. Elena's eyes snapped open, her blood ran cold. Standing not 10 feet away, flanked by gleaming Rimowa luggage, was Richard Davenport. He looked exactly as he always had, offensively handsome, wearing a tailored Italian suit that probably cost more than her apartment's security deposit, and radiating an aura of smug, unearned superiority. His hair was perfectly coiffed, his smile a bright, predatory slash, and clinging to his arm, looking like a high-fashion flamingo, was Chloe. She was draped in a pink Balenciaga tracksuit, her lips inflated to comical proportions, and her eyes, wide and vacant, scanned the room with a look of profound boredom. Elena's first instinct was to shrink, to disappear into the beige upholstery of the chair. She felt a hot flush of shame creep up her neck. Of all the places, of all the times. Richard sauntered over, Chloe trailing behind him like an expensive accessory. He stopped directly in front of her chair, forcing her to look up at him. "Elena," he said, drawing the name out, his voice dripping with condescending amusement. "I have to say I'm shocked. This is the invitation-only lounge. Did you get lost on your way to the food court?" Chloe let out a high-pitched titter. "Ricky, don't be mean. Maybe she's cleaning in here now. It's good, honest work." Eleanor's hands clenched in her lap. She refused to give them the satisfaction of a response. She simply stared at him, her expression neutral, though inside, her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Still silent," Richard scoffed, shaking his head as if she were a lost cause. "Always the quiet little mouse, weren't you? Look at you, Elena. Same drab clothes. Life not treating you well after me?" He leaned in, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, though it was still loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Still living in that sad little apartment in Jersey? I saw the pictures. Very cozy." He was baiting her. He had always been a bully, someone who could only feel big by making others feel small, and she had always been his favorite target. "We," he said, gesturing dramatically to himself and Chloe, "are on our way to Aspen. A little thank you from our investors." Helios is landing a massive new round of funding. We're about to go stratospheric. You probably read about it. Elena hadn't. The only news she followed was the quiet collapse of Helios's stock price. Public records showed the company was hemorrhaging cash, burning through the goodwill she had built and failing to innovate. Richard was a salesman, not a builder, and he had sold a lemon. She knew from her contacts that he was desperately scrambling for funding, not celebrating it. He was lying. As always. "What about you?" he pressed, enjoying his performance. "What brings you to Teterboro? Meeting a new guy? Did you finally land one? Let me guess. Is he a regional sales manager? A dentist?" He laughed, a loud braying sound that made a nearby woman in a Chanel suit look up in annoyance. "Seriously, Elena," he said, the fake pity in his voice making her skin crawl. "What are you even doing here? You look completely out of place. Are you waiting for an Uber? This is the wrong building for that, sweetheart." He and Chloe laughed together. It was the sound that had haunted her nightmares, the sound of their shared betrayal. Elena looked down at her hands, at the chipped nail polish on her right index finger from a late-night coding session. She took a deep, steadying breath. She had come too far to let him break her. Not here. Not today. She looked up, meeting his gaze evenly. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but clear as a bell. "I'm waiting for a flight, Richard." Richard's eyebrows shot up. "A flight? On what? A propeller plane to Poughkeepsie? You can't even afford a first-class ticket on United anymore, let alone a seat out of Teterboro." "Ricky," Chloe whined, pulling on his arm. "Stop talking to her. You're getting her little sad sack germs on your suit. Let's go get some champagne." "In a minute, baby," Richard said, patting her hand, his eyes still locked on Eleanor. He couldn't stand that she wasn't crumbling. "I'm just fascinated. This is like watching a nature documentary. The discarded mate trying to return to the watering hole." Elena stood up. She was 5'5", and Richard towered over her. But by standing, she reclaimed some small piece of her dignity. She picked up her simple tote bag, her knuckles white. "You should go, Richard. Your champagne is waiting." "Oh, so feisty now," he sneered. "Where was this backbone when we were married? Oh wait, I remember. You didn't have one. You were just the code monkey in the basement. I built that company, Elena. I built it. And you? You're just a footnote." "A footnote," Elena repeated, the words tasting like ash. "That's right. And now, if you'll excuse us," he said, taking Chloe's arm again. "We have to prepare for our flight. Our ride's a beauty, a citation latitude, brand new." He began to steer Chloe away, but paused, looking back over his shoulder as a final parting shot. "It's a shame, really. You had so much potential, but you needed me to make any of it matter. And now look at you." He gestured around the luxurious lounge again. "A mouse trying to play pretend with the lions. It's just sad." He turned and walked away, his laughter echoing back to her. Elena sank back into the chair, her legs trembling. The cruelty was so familiar, so precise. He knew exactly where to cut. For a terrifying second, she believed him. She felt small. She felt worthless. She felt like the footnote he'd declared her to be. The sting of Richard's words sent her spiraling back. Back to the damp, fluorescent-lit computer lab at Stanford, where they had first met. She had been a graduate student, head down in a complex thesis on neural networks. He had been a business student, cutting a swath through the campus with his charm and dazzling smile. He'd approached her, not with the awkward fumbling of her engineering peers, but with a confident, polished interest. "I hear you're the one who can actually make this stuff work," he'd said, gesturing to her screen full of code. He hadn't been wrong. Eleanor lived in a world of pure logic, a world where code was poetry and algorithms were a language she spoke more fluently than English. Richard, she learned, lived in a world of presentations, networking, and narratives. He didn't understand her work, not really, but he understood, immediately, its value. "We're a team, Elle," he used to say, back when his eyes were still genuine. "You're the engine, I'm the steering wheel. We'll go places." And they did. She'd dropped her PhD to co-found Helios AI. Her parents had been worried, but Richard had been so persuasive. They married in a simple courthouse ceremony. The first 2 years were a blur of all-nighters, cheap pizza, and the thrill of creation. Elena coded, and Richard pitched. Her algorithm, which could predict consumer behavior with terrifying accuracy, was their golden goose. They secured funding. Then more funding. The change in Richard was gradual, then sudden. The steering wheel began to believe it was the entire car. He started referring to her work as our work, then my work. He was the one on stage, the one giving interviews. Elena, who hated the spotlight, was content to stay in the background, to build, to solve. She was the chief technology officer, but at board meetings, Richard would often cut her off. "Elena's getting into the weeds," he'd laugh. "Let me give you the 30,000-foot view." He convinced her to put most of their joint assets into Helios AI stock, all under a complex holding company he controlled. "It's smarter for tax purposes, Elle," he'd assured her. She, who could model quantum data, found herself baffled by the corporate legal jargon and trusted him. It was a devastating mistake. The patent she'd kept was a fluke. It was for a side project, an idea she'd had about using her AI for predictive logistics instead of human behavior. She'd filed it herself, on a weekend, paying the small fee with her personal credit card. She'd told Richard about it, and he'd dismissed it. "Logistics? Boring. Stick to the moneymaker, Elle. Stick to what we know." Then came the first signs of his infidelity. The late nights he couldn't explain, the scent of a perfume that wasn't hers, the sudden, obsessive focus on his appearance. When she finally confronted him, finding a hotel receipt in his suit pocket, he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "It just happened, Elena," he'd said, as if discussing the weather. "Chloe, she understands the pressure I'm under. She supports my vision." "And I don't," Elena had whispered, the floor dropping out from under her. "I wrote the vision, Richard. You wrote the code," he'd snapped, the mask of the charming husband falling away to reveal the cold, ruthless man beneath. "The code is replaceable. I'm not. You're holding me back, Elena. You're a weight." The divorce was his final, brutal masterpiece. His lawyers, the best money could buy, systematically dismantled her contributions. They produced emails where Richard directed her research. He had just forwarded articles. They highlighted her lack of public-facing appearances as proof of her minor role. They portrayed her as a disgruntled employee, not a co-founder. When it came to the worthless patent, Richard's lawyer had literally scoffed in the deposition. Ms. Hayes is welcome to her little academic project. We, on the other hand, will be keeping the multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Elena, heartbroken and financially bled dry by her own lawyers, had no fight left in her. She signed the papers. She walked out of the courtroom, took a taxi to a tiny sublet apartment, and for the first time in her life, she didn't just cry. She wailed. She screamed into a pillow until her throat was raw, mourning the loss of her husband, her company, and her life's work. It was a full week before she opened her laptop. When she did, she saw the file containing the patent. Boring, he had called it. She opened it, her eyes scanning the complex mathematical proofs she'd written. A slow, cold anger began to burn away the grief. He was wrong. It wasn't boring. It was brilliant. And Richard, in his infinite arrogance, had left her with the one thing that could destroy him. He had taken the engine, yes, but she had kept the blueprint for a reactor. A new voice, sharp and professional, cut through her memory. "Mom? Miss Hayes?" Elena blinked, the painful past receding. The lounge attendant, a young woman with a kind smile, was standing over her. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Miss Hayes, but I have an update on your flight." Elena's stomach plummeted. A delay. A cancellation. They changed their minds. Richard, who had been holding court by the espresso machine, turned to watch, a smirk plastered on his face. He was waiting for the final humiliation, the moment the mouse was told to leave the lounge. "Yes?" Elena said, her voice barely a whisper. "Your aircraft has just landed," the attendant said, checking her tablet. "It's taxiing to the ramp now. The crew will be ready to welcome you aboard in approximately 15 minutes. May I get you a fresh coffee while you wait?" Elena stared at her. It's here?" "Yes, Mom, right on schedule." The attendant smiled and walked away. Elena looked across the lounge. Richard's smirk had faltered. He looked confused. She could see the gears turning in his head. She's not being kicked out. Her flight is real. He exchanged a puzzled look with Chloe, who just shrugged and took a selfie. Elena turned to look out the massive, floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the tarmac, and her heart didn't just stop. It felt like it rebooted. Before the attendant's words had even fully registered, Richard was moving. The idea that Elena might have something he didn't, something he hadn't approved or wasn't aware of, was an offense to his entire sense of self. He left Chloe by the coffee bar and marched back over to Elena's chair. His smile was gone, replaced by a tight, inquisitive frown. "What is this, Elena? What did you do cashing your 401k for a one-way ticket on a charter, running away?" Elena turned from the window. The knot of fear in her stomach was loosening, replaced by a cold, hard sense of inevitability. The endgame was here. "I told you, Richard. I'm waiting for a flight." "Yes, but what flight? You don't have this kind of money. I know what you have. I know what I left you. It wasn't enough to get you a membership at a Costco, let alone a private jet." "Richard," Elena said, her voice low and steady. "This doesn't concern you." "Everything you do concerns me," he shot back, his voice rising. "You're still using my name." "Oh, wait. You went back to Hayes. Smart. Wouldn't want you dirtying up the Davenport brand. Ricky, Chloe called, clicking her way over in stiletto-heeled boots. What's taking so long? Our pilots are here. They're waiting. She held up her phone, showing a text message. The citation is ready. Richard glanced at his watch, then back at Eleanor. He couldn't leave. Not without solving this puzzle. Not without re-establishing his dominance. A citation latitude, he said to Eleanor, as if she should be impressed. Top of its class. I'm sure your flight, he made air quotes with his fingers, will be very comfortable. Does it have propellers? Do they give you a bag of peanuts? He laughed. It was the laugh she hated. The laugh he'd used in the lawyer's office. The laugh he'd used in their bedroom when he told her she was a weight. It was loud, designed to draw attention, to make her the center of a humiliating spectacle, and it worked. The other occupants of the lounge, who had been politely ignoring them, were now looking over. They saw a man in a Zegna suit and a younger woman in Balenciaga, laughing at a plain woman in a beige cardigan. The story wrote itself. She was the poor relation, the ex-wife, the charity case. Look at her, Chloe, Richard said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. She's actually blushing. She's embarrassed. It's okay, Eleanor. We've all been there. Well, not here, he gestured to the lounge, but you know. Down on our luck. Maybe I can help you out. I could offer you a job. Helios is expanding. We could probably use a junior coder, or someone to fetch coffee. You were always good at that. The room was silent, save for Richard's mocking chuckle. Elena felt the stares of the other passengers like physical blows. A man in a pinstripe suit shook his head with a look of pity before turning back to his Wall Street Journal. Elena's face was burning, but not with embarrassment. It was with a rage so pure and cold it sharpened her senses. She could hear the hum of the ventilation, the soft click of Chloe's phone as she filmed this, and, faintly, the distant whine of a jet engine taxiing. She stood up again, her spine straight as a steel rod. You're right about one thing, Richard, she said, her voice cutting through the silence. His smile widened. Oh, yeah? What's that? I'm good at fetching coffee. She picked up her own untouched cup. But I'm better at mathematics, and you were always terrible at it. Richard's face twitched. What's that supposed to mean? It means you should have read the fine print. You should have paid attention in class. You took the house, the money, and the company. You took the shell, Richard. But you forgot the one thing that made it all work. He stared at her, the laughter finally dying in his throat. He had no idea what she was talking about. His arrogance had made him blind. He genuinely believed he was the genius. You're pathetic, he finally spat, falling back on his old insults. Delusional. You're sitting here, probably on a friends and family pass from some pilot you're dating, trying to lecture me about my business. You're a joke, Elena. You were a joke when we were married, and you're a bigger joke now. Richard, let's go, Chloe whined, tugging at his sleeve. You're making a scene, and not the fun kind. In a second, he hissed. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. You will always be nothing. You'll sit here and wait for your little puddle jumper, and I'll be in Aspen, closing a deal that will make me a billionaire. Remember that. Remember this moment, when you had the chance to be gracious, and you chose to be this. He turned his back on her, a final, dismissive act. He and Chloe began to walk toward the doors leading to the tarmac, their luggage gliding silently behind them. Elena just stood there. She watched him go. She felt the eyes of the lounge on her. She was, in that moment, exactly what he'd called her. The laughing stock. She closed her eyes and counted to 5, focusing on the sound of the approaching jet. It was closer now. Much closer. The journey from her apartment floor to this FBO lounge had been a brutal climb. After the divorce, Elena hadn't just lost her company, she'd lost her identity. For weeks, she'd done nothing but dissect her worthless patent. Richard's dismissal of it had been his single greatest error. He saw logistics, trucks, ships, warehouses. Elena saw a complex, dynamic system of predictive data, a problem far more challenging and valuable than predicting what brand of soda someone might buy. She'd built Phoenix Systems from nothing. Her office was a second-hand desk crammed into the corner of her studio apartment. Her boardroom was a local coffee shop with free Wi-Fi. She'd lived on instant noodles and the small, dwindling payout from the divorce. Every line of code was written with a desperate, burning intensity. She slept in 3-hour increments, her dreams filled with data strings and Richard's laughing face. She worked for a year in total isolation. No one knew what she was building. She'd learned her lesson. Never again would she share her work, her soul, with someone who saw it as a mere commodity. When the platform was stable, she didn't seek venture capital. She didn't pitch to smug young men in hoodies. She'd used her last $1,000 to hire a patent lawyer and secure her new IP. Then she'd crafted a single, perfect email. It wasn't sent to a venture capitalist. It was sent to the personal encrypted inbox of Julian Thorne, the reclusive, visionary CEO of Astra Dynamics. Thorne was a legend, a man who had built a global empire on technology that actually worked, not just on hype. He was known as a ruthless but fair operator who detested the kind of visionary salesman Richard pretended to be. Elena hadn't expected a reply. It was a shot in the dark, a final, desperate flare. The reply came 6 hours later. My office, Zurich, tomorrow. Astra Dynamics had sent a car. They had flown her, Economy Plus, to Switzerland. She'd walked into a boardroom that overlooked the Alps, her hands shaking, clutching her laptop. Julian Thorne wasn't a young man. He was in his late 60s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through her. She didn't give a sales pitch. She just opened her laptop and ran the demonstration. She showed him how her AI, Phoenix, could analyze global shipping routes, weather patterns, manufacturing chains, and political instability in real time, predicting and rerouting supply chains with 99.8% efficiency. It was a program that could save a company like Astra Dynamics billions. Thorne and his team of engineers watched, silent, for 2 hours. They asked her questions, not about profit margins or marketing, but about her architecture, her data modeling, her predictive decay algorithms. It was the most thrilling conversation of her life. At the end, Thorne had closed her laptop for her. "Ms. Hayes," he'd said, his voice gravelly. "You haven't just built a better logistics program. You've solved the problem of global freight. What do you want?" "I want to build," she'd said, her voice shaking but firm. I want to see this work, and I want to ensure that Helios AI never benefits from a single line of my code again." Thorne had nodded, a thin smile playing on his lips. "Helios AI, Davenport's company. Don't worry about them. They're a ghost ship. They've been trying to win our primary logistics contract for a year, pitching us the very technology you invented. They just don't know how to make it work without you. They're irrelevant." The negotiations had been swift. Astra Dynamics wouldn't just buy her program, they would acquire Phoenix Systems. They would make Elena the head of their new global logistics division. The offer was staggering. It wasn't just rich. It was generational wealth. It was the power to build, to create, to be secure for the rest of her life. And today was the signing. The flight to Geneva was the final step. Elena's thoughts snapped back to the present. Richard and Chloe were at the glass doors, chatting with their pilots. Their ride, the Citation Latitude, was parked on the ramp. It was a nice plane, no doubt. Serviceable. But it was parked next to the aircraft that had just arrived for her. Elena's gaze drifted past the Citation to the machine that had just silenced the tarmac. It was magnificent. It wasn't just a plane, it was a statement. A Gulfstream G6 Fighter, the largest, fastest, and longest-range business jet in the world. Its body was a sleek, pearlescent white, its twin engines mounted at the rear like the shoulders of a panther. The Astra Dynamics logo, a simple, stylized star, was painted elegantly on the high T-tail. It made the Citation look like a child's toy. The main door of the Gulfstream hissed open, and a set of polished aluminum stairs folded out, touching the tarmac with a soft, expensive thud. Two pilots in crisp dark uniforms emerged, followed by a flight attendant in a sharp grey suit. Richard and Chloe, standing by their own aircraft, had stopped talking. They were openly staring at the G650. "My God," Chloe breathed, her voice carrying across the quiet ramp. "Who is that for? That's bigger than the one the Kardashians use." Richard was silent, his face a mask of confusion and envy. He knew planes. He knew exactly what that aircraft represented. It was $70 million of go anywhere, anytime power. It was the preferred transport of billionaires and heads of state. Back in the lounge, the kind-faced attendant approached Elena again. "Ms. Hayes, your party is here to escort you." Elena turned. Walking through the entrance from the reception area was a man she recognized, Julian Thorne's chief of staff, a formidable German man named Mr. Richter. He was dressed in a dark, perfectly tailored suit, his expression polite but intense. "Miss Hayes," he said, offering a small, correct bow. "A pleasure. Mr. Thorne sends his apologies. He was held up in Singapore. He will meet you directly in Geneva. We are ready for you, if you are." "Thank you, Mr. Richter." "I'm ready," Elena said. She picked up her simple tote bag. Mr. Richter gestured to the glass doors leading to the tarmac. "After you." Elena began to walk. The entire lounge was watching her. The man with the Wall Street Journal had lowered his paper completely. Her path took her directly past the espresso bar, where Richard and Chloe were now rushing back inside, their faces a picture of utter disbelief. Richard grabbed his pilot's arm. "Is there a mistake? Who is that plane for?" The pilot just shrugged. "No mistake, Mr. Davenport. That's N400 AD, Astra Dynamics' flagship. She's here for a Ms. Elena Hayes." Richard's head snapped toward Elena. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The blood drained from his face, leaving him a sickly, pale grey. Chloe looked from Richard to Elena, and back again. Elena. Hayes. Her. Ricky, what is going on? That's not possible. She's a nobody. Elena didn't stop walking. She walked past the espresso bar, past the staring receptionists, and toward the door. Mr. Richter held it open for her. As she passed, she was now only feet from Richard. He was trembling, his arrogant composure completely shattered. Elena, he stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper. Elena, what is this? Is this a joke? Who are you with? What did you do? Elena paused, her hand on the door. She looked at him. Not with anger. Not with pity. She looked at him with the cool, detached gaze of a scientist observing a failed experiment. I told you, Richard. You were always terrible at math. You thought you had the whole equation. What? What are you talking about? He whispered, desperate. You took Helios. You kept the brand. You kept the offices. But the algorithm that ran it? My algorithm? It had a kill switch, Richard. A back door I built in, just in case. The one you and your high-priced lawyers never found. Richard's eyes widened in dawning horror. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Elena said calmly. The code just expired. The core logic was designed to decay and become obsolete after 2 years without my maintenance key. That was... let me see. She tapped a finger to her chin. About 6 months ago, right around the time your stock began to tank, right around the time Astra Dynamics pulled their contract bid from you. They don't like investing in ghost ships. She had just used Thorne's own words. The realization hit Richard like a physical blow. It wasn't just that she had succeeded. It was that she was the reason he was failing. His company wasn't just struggling. It was an empty shell, and she held the key. He wasn't on his way to Aspen for a new round of funding. He was here, on a chartered citation, to beg a minor investor for a bridge loan just to make payroll. And he was going to be denied. He was ruined, and she had done it. You bitch, he breathed, his voice thick with a hatred that was pure and impotent. Chloe just stared, her mouth agape. But he's... Elena didn't grace his insult with a response. She simply turned away from him, pulling her tote bag onto her shoulder. Mr. Richter, she said, I'd like to go now. I have a signing to get to. Of course, Miss Hayes. This way. Mr. Richter guided her out the door. The crisp November air hit her face. It smelled like jet fuel and freedom. Elena stepped onto the tarmac. The ground beneath her feet felt solid. The whine of the GX150ER's auxiliary power unit was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. It was the sound of her future. She walked across the tarmac, Mr. Richter by her side. The flight attendant was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, smiling. Welcome, Miss Hayes. We have your preferred tea, the Silver Needle, and the briefing for your flight to Geneva. Thank you, Elena said, her voice steady. She put her foot on the first step. Behind her, she heard a commotion. Elena, wait! You can't just... You can't. Richard had burst through the lounge doors, running onto the tarmac, his $3,000 shoes slipping on the painted lines. Chloe was right behind him, shrieking his name. An FBO security guard was already moving to intercept him. Elena, please! he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "We can fix this. We can be partners again. I'll get rid of her. We can have it back, like it was. I need you." The last 3 words hung in the air, a pathetic, raw confession. He did need her. He always had. He just hadn't known it until this very second. Elena paused on the steps. She turned, looking down at the man who had shattered her life. He was a mess. His perfect hair was mussed. His face was blotchy and terrified. The security guard had him by the arm, but he was still reaching for her. She looked at him. The man she had once loved. The man who had called her a footnote. And she felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. She felt a profound, deep and final sense of release. The ghost that had haunted her was finally gone. "Goodbye, Richard," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. It was a final judgment. She turned her back on him for the last time. She walked up the remaining stairs and into the cabin of the Gulfstream. The interior was a cavern of cream leather, polished dark wood, and soft, indirect lighting. It was quiet, peaceful. The flight attendant pulled the heavy door shut, and the latch engaged with a solid, satisfying thunk. The noise of the tarmac and Richard's desperate shouts was cut off completely. Elena sank into a seat that felt like a cloud. The flight attendant handed her a warm towel. "We are cleared for takeoff, Miss Hayes. We should be in the air in 5 minutes." Elena nodded, fastening her seatbelt. She looked out the large oval window. She saw Richard, a small, defeated figure, being escorted back into the lounge by security. She saw Chloe, standing frozen by the citation, her hands over her mouth. Then, the massive Rolls-Royce engines of the GE Fantasia spooled up. The jet began to move, gliding smoothly away from the FBO. It taxied to the runway, paused for a moment, and then, with a powerful, breathtaking roar, it accelerated. Elena was pushed back into her seat as the plane lifted off the ground, climbing steeply into the bright, clear sky. She watched as Teterboro, then New Jersey, then the entire messy, painful chapter of her past shrank away beneath her, disappearing into the clouds. She was flying toward Geneva. She was flying toward her future, and she was finally free. The Gulfstream GA-50ER did not so much climb as it ascended. It was a quiet, relentless push against gravity, a smooth, vibration-free transition from the Earth to the stratosphere. Elena was pinned gently to the plush, cream-colored leather, a sensation so different from the rattling, jostling fight of a commercial jet. Below her, the patchwork of New Jersey dissolved into a blur, then was obscured by a flawless white blanket of clouds. The sun, bright and unfiltered at 41,000 feet, filled the cabin with a clean, antiseptic light. For the first 10 minutes, she didn't move. She just stared out the window, her heart rate slowly returning to normal. The image of Richard's face, pale, terrified, and distorted by his own desperate shouts, was burned into her memory. She had expected to feel a rush of triumphant joy, a giddy, vindictive pleasure. Instead, she felt quiet. It was the profound, echoing silence of a heavy iron door clanging shut on a prison cell, a cell she hadn't even fully realized she was in. "Ms. Hayes?" Elena turned. The flight attendant, a poised woman with a soft Scandinavian accent, was smiling at her. "May I offer you something to drink? We have a 2008 Dom Perignon on ice, or I can prepare that silver needle tea you requested. Eleanor looked down at her beige cardigan, at the simple tote bag at her feet. The tea would be lovely. Thank you, Kirsten, she said, reading the attendant's name badge. A moment later, Mr. Richter emerged from the forward cabin, holding a sleek, leather-bound binder. He took the seat opposite her. He was not a man for small talk. A good departure, he stated, placing the binder on the polished table between them. Mr. Thorne asked me to brief you en route. He felt it best you arrive. Prepared. Prepared for what, exactly? Elena asked, accepting the delicate porcelain cup of tea from Kirsten. For the scale of your new operation, Richter said. He tapped the binder. This is not a simple acquisition, Ms. Hayes. This is a corporate realignment. Astra Dynamics is not just buying Phoenix Systems. We are building our entire global logistics division around it. And around you. He opened the binder. The first page was an organizational chart. At the top, in a simple, bold box, was Julian Thorne. Directly beneath him was a new corresponding box, Astra Global Dynamics, AGD. And inside that box, one name, Elena Hayes, Director. Elena felt her breath catch. This was not a middle management position. This was not a team lead role. The chart showed nearly 400 employees across 3 continents, in Hamburg, Singapore, and Los Angeles, who would, as of Lero 900 tomorrow, report to her. This is, she began, her mind racing. This is significantly larger than I anticipated. Mr. Thorne does not do things in small measures, Richter said, his face unreadable. He is not buying your past work. He is investing in your future potential. The financial package you agreed to is, of course, secure. But this is the work. He turned the page. It was a budget proposal. The numbers were so large they looked like typos. The allocation for R&D alone was more than the entire valuation of Helios AI at its peak. Your first directive, Richter continued, is to integrate your Phoenix platform into our existing infrastructure. Mr. Thorne has authorized a complete server overhaul. You will have carte blanche. You will select the hardware, the team, and the timeline. You are expected to have the system fully operational within 6 months. The board will be monitoring your progress. Elena leaned back, the warmth of the teacup seeping into her cold hands. The fear that had briefly surfaced was replaced by a familiar electric hum. It was the feeling she got when faced with an impossible equation, a complex problem that begged to be solved. She wasn't intimidated, she was hungry. The timeline is too long, she said, her voice sharp and clear. Richter paused, raising an eyebrow. I beg your pardon. 6 months is too long. The code is stable. The weakness isn't the platform, it's the integration. If I have the budget you've listed here, and full administrative access, I can have the core system integrated and running in 90 days. We can be beta testing by the new year. I'll need to handpick a red team from your existing cybersecurity division to try and break it. Richter stared at her for a long moment. The polite professional mask wavered, replaced by a flicker of genuine respect. I see, he said. Mr. Thorne was correct about you. And the team, Elena continued, flipping through the personnel files. These division heads in Hamburg and Singapore. Their logistics experience is based on the old models. They'll resist, I need to fly to Hamburg first, then Singapore. I need to be on the ground, with my engineers. A video call won't be sufficient. Mr. Thorne anticipated that as well, Richter said, a thin smile touching his lips. The G650 is at your disposal, Director. Your travel schedule will be managed by my office. Director. The title landed with a solid, physical weight. This was real. The rest of the 7-hour flight passed in a blur of focused work. Kirsten brought them a meal of seared scallops and risotto, which Elena ate while dissecting a complex data flow schematic. She had, in the space of a transatlantic flight, transitioned from ex-wife to executive. When she finally closed the binder, the sun was setting ahead of them, painting the sky in violent streaks of purple and orange. She had completely forgotten about Richard. They landed in Geneva just after 10:00 p.m. local time. The descent was as smooth as the ascent. As Eleanor looked out the window, the lights of the city glittered around the dark, placid shape of Lake Geneva. There was no terminal. The jet taxied to a private, silent hangar where a black Mercedes-Maybach S-Class was waiting, its engine purring. Mr. Thorne is waiting at the headquarters, Richter said, ushering her from the jet stairs directly into the back of the sedan. The air was cold, crisp, and smelled of pine. The drive was silent. Elena watched the immaculate, ancient city roll by. In the seatback pocket, a tablet was displaying international news. A headline from the Financial Times caught her eye. Helios AI stock in freefall as CEO Davenport faces crisis of confidence. She tapped it. The article was brief and brutal. The stock had halted trading after plummeting 68% in a single day. Rumors of a catastrophic systems failure, coupled with the loss of a major potential contract, whispered to be with conglomerate Astra Dynamics, have gutted the company's value. Analysts are raising long-dormant questions about the company's core IP, which many believe was tied to co-founder Elena Hayes, who left the company years ago. CEO Richard Davenport was unavailable for comment. Elena switched off the tablet. It was done. The equation was balanced. There was no joy, only a quiet, logical finality. The Astrodynamics headquarters was a blade of dark glass and steel that rose from the lake's edge. It was a building that radiated power. They were escorted, not to a waiting room, but directly to the penthouse floor. The office was vast, a minimalist expanse of stone and glass overlooking the entire city. Julian Thorne stood from behind a massive empty desk. He was, as she remembered, imposing. He wore a simple black turtleneck and grey trousers, but he commanded the room. "Ms. Hayes," he said, his voice a low gravel. "Good flight?" "Productive," Elena said, shaking his offered hand. His grip was firm. "So Richter tells me. You believe you can beat our timeline by 3 months?" "I know I can," she replied. "Good," Thorne said. He gestured to the desk. A single, thick document and a pen were laid out. "Our lawyers are present, but I find them tedious. I will summarize. This document gives you full control of the Astra Global Dynamics division. Your compensation is as agreed. Your budget is as stated. Your authority is second only to mine. You will succeed, or you will fail, entirely on your own merits. I do not tolerate excuses, and I do not reward failure. I do, however, reward results. Do we have an understanding?" This was a world away from Richard. With his empty charm, his stolen credit, his promises of vision. This was a stark, cold, and thrilling meritocracy. "A perfect understanding, Mr. Thorne," Elena said. She picked up the pen. It was heavy, made of cold, black metal. She found the signature line. Elena Hayes. She signed her name. Her handwriting, once small and precise, now looked bold, the ink flowing thick and dark on the heavy paper. "Excellent," Thorne said. He did not smile. He simply nodded. The deal concluded. "Welcome to Astra, Director Hayes." He buzzed his intercom. "Richter, take Director Hayes to her residence. Have our tailor meet her there in the morning, and clear my schedule for 0900. I want to be at her first briefing." "Yes, sir," Richter said. He turned to Eleanor. "This way, Director." As Eleanor followed him out, she paused at the door, catching her reflection in the dark glass. She saw a woman in a practical, worn, beige cardigan, her hair pulled back in a simple tie, her face pale with exhaustion. But her eyes were different. They were sharp, focused, and utterly devoid of fear. Thorne spoke one last time, without turning around. "Oh, and Director Hayes?" "Yes, Mr. Thorne?" "That cardigan. Burn it. You're not a footnote. You're the one writing the book." Eleanor nodded, a small, sharp smile touching her lips for the first time. "Consider it done." She walked out of the office, the heavy doors closing behind her, not on a new life, but on a life she had finally, fully, claimed for herself. The work was just beginning. Elena's story isn't just about the jet. It's about the silence, the silent work, the silent pain, and the silent strength that builds when no one is watching. She proved that success isn't about the noise you make or the credit you take. It's about the foundation you build. The world and the people in it may try to tell you you're a footnote. They may laugh at you from their own small planes. But the future belongs to those who, like Elena, have the courage to build their own wings. What did you think of Elena's ultimate comeback? Do you believe in this kind of karma, where true talent and hard work finally win? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and resilience, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life drama.